Welcome to Bloodborne. Lovely place, isn't it? I'm assuming that you already know the lore, but if you don't, that is okay. Bloodborne's story is written in Yharnam streets, and a lot of it can be deduced without even watching the opening cutscene or even paying attention to any dialogue. By simply paying attention to the first few levels, you can already infer a lot of things about what's going on in Yharnam streets. Let me show you. Immediately after starting the game, we wake up in a clinic that seems to be in a very derelict state. There's broken furniture and shattered glass everywhere. Everything is a mess. Not hard to guess that something went quite wrong in here. Proceeding a little bit forward, we arrive at a big central hall with a lot of hospital beds and poles with blood vials on it. It seems like blood transfusion specifically is quite a common thing around here. Couldn't have guessed that one. In the center of the room we find a werewolf snacking on what was either a patient or a doctor of the clinic. It is probably responsible for the mess inside, and from this we can already formulate a couple of theories. Given that all the doors to the clinic are closed and there are no other visible entryways, in all likelihood this werewolf was already here. Right on this moment, not even 1 minute into the game, we can already make the link that these blood transfusions are probably responsible for turning this guy into a monster that killed all the patients. Anyways, you're supposed to die to him, or you can kill him if you're cracked like me and exit the clinic. And here's the thing. The entrance to this clinic is a graveyard. A rather questionable architectural choice to display your failures at the entrance. After all, dead clients don't pay. But this will actually make a lot of sense just as soon as we step out of the gates into central Yharnam. The moment you begin to thread through the desolate streets, you will see that death is everywhere. There are coffins littering the streets, some are even chained up. Proceeding a little more, we see men marching through the streets wielding improvised weapons and torches. We don't know what they want or why they're here, but the fact that they attack you on sight probably means that they are not in the best mental state. Or maybe they're just British, I don't know. Upon ascending the ladder, we see a lit window. This is a guy and we can talk to him. Not even paying attention to the dialogue, the very fact that there is a guy speaking coherently means that not everyone has gone mad. Also take note of this little red lamp by his window. As we continue through the streets, we find more interesting things. Death is so abundant to the point where coffins are no longer enough. There are buckets and containers filled with bones just laying on the ground. Whatever is happening to the city has people dying very fast. A little ahead we can find crucifixes lit on fire and with beasts tied to them, likely the handiwork of the Yharnamites we just fought. Given the overall state of the streets, there seems to be a riot or a rally going on. A hunt, if you will. The citizens have assembled to hunt down and kill the beasts that are being transformed by the blood. Though it seems that they themselves are already in the early stages of lycanthropy, given their madness and asymmetrical limbs. Another interesting thing is that a lot of them seem to be carrying torches. Quite odd because it's technically the late afternoon, the sun is still out, visibility is quite good, and no houses appear to be on fire. Even if their purpose was to burn the corpses of the hunted beasts, either to avoid infection or for some sort of ritualistic reason, just having one guy with a torch would be enough. The entire mob carrying them is not necessary. So, if so many of them are carrying torches, there's a good chance that fire is actually an implement that aids in the beast hunting. A little ahead we find an abandoned wheelchair. It seems that either the healing property of the blood or the beast curse is miraculous in what it can do to the user. Or, you know, the guy just crawled to safety, maybe. We can also find another red lamp here, and behind the door there are people we can talk to. We found another one of those back in the main street as well, and sure enough, there was a talkable guy back there too. 3 things can be inferred from this. First, gameplay-wise, whenever we see a red lamp, it means that there is dialogue to be heard. Second, there is a chance that this red lamp being placed at the entrances of the houses correlates with the people inside being able to keep their sanity and fend off the beasts. And third, the red lamp makes buildings be able to talk. Anyways, let's keep going. Up this set of stairs and we see this big ass carriage with a lot of luggage, both things we've seen in different parts of the streets. It seems like a lot of the people decided to just up and leave the city because of how bad things got, but it seems like the aforementioned things got so bad in fact that there wasn't enough time to leave. The carriages are just parked or crash everywhere as the people try to leave in a hurry. It's also interesting to see that coffins can be seen inside or near the carriages, maybe the bodies are being taken somewhere. In this bridge we found the beasties again. It's quite hard to fight them normally, but we have the opportunity to test the theory that the beasts are weak to fire here. And sure enough, if we throw a Molotov, they get quite a lot of damage. This fight would otherwise be quite challenging, but it becomes easier with the information we gathered. I'm going to make a little detour to acquire the Hunter's Rip, and I'd like to point out another thing. The architecture in Yharnam is very pretty, like every little house has this intricate Victorian architecture and the structures are not easy to build. There's art, architecture and statues everywhere. Yharnam was going through a golden age before everything went to shit. Like, they were affluent to the point where they could put intricate ornaments even in the sewers. Alright, drip acquired, let's head out and go through the bridge. And after crossing this archway, we find ourselves in a confrontation with the cleric beast. How interesting is it that... Okay, I know that this is technically a word and I said, oh, how it tells a story without words, but hear me out. How interesting is it that the largest and most dangerous beast we've found so far has an ecclesiastic title attached to it? Being a member of the clergy somehow correlates with a more violent transformation, either due to more access to the blood or some sort of spiritual connection. Who's to say? I am, because I know I'm right and I already know the lore of the game, but for real, look at how many things we could theorize about just from observation alone. And this isn't common to just Central Yharnam. Proceeding through Cathedral Ward, we get even more clues as to what might be going on. And don't mind the character change. What's interesting is that as we proceed through this district, it becomes very evident that the things going on here are quite a bit weirder than in the rest of the city. The area is on lockdown and there seems to be considerably fewer beasts here than in Central Yharnam, but that's not to say that they're doing any better. Coffins litter the streets and these odd men patrol the narrow alleyways. It's hard to say whether they're hunting beasts or just enforcing the curfew. The very central plaza is a cemetery, and with these giant mutated versions of the patrol members circling around it. Evidently, they aren't like the common folk, but there's still no way to know what exactly happened to them to make them look like this. Another thing to note are these metal containers hanging about the streets, incense holders. They are abundant in places where beasts are few, yet another bit of evidence of our earlier hypothesis. In a secluded alleyway, we find perhaps the weirdest enemy so far, this Cthulhu-looking motherfucker. It's hard to say whether or not he's a product of beasthood, as this enemy is much different from anything else we've seen before. There are no beasts in Cathedral Ward, only a few citizens that are partially transformed, and even so they look animalistic. It's hard to believe that the only fully transformed Yharnamite is this guy and the other one like him near the plaza. Given the differences, he might be a victim of something else. The lobotomy scar is further evidence of that. As we ascend the stairs of the Grand Cathedral, we see statues not of saints and angels, but of alien creatures holding spears of sorts. And at the apex of the steps, we find ourselves in the church's nave. Before us, we see only a frail woman kneeling down, but before we can get to her, she transforms into yet another giant beast. This is the second time we've seen a member of the church turn into a beast much more fearsome than the other ones we found. Third if we count Father Gascoigne, which I skipped in this video. It is very clear at this point that being a member of the clergy is associated with a more violent transformation. I'm going to stop here, but look at all the things we managed to deduce, the picture we managed to paint through observation alone. This isn't exclusive to just these two areas, you can see it throughout the entire game. Its story is written in its environment. Granted, you won't always be able to infer the whole lore of a game just from a stroll through the map, but you can get a few additional bits and pieces of information that you'd otherwise miss because you're too busy focusing on surviving and shit. And it's such a shame because I only now found out that I could play a game this way, and I'm sure that there are many other games with equivalent levels of environmental storytelling that just completely went over my head. And I'm not sure if all these things I said are actually blatantly obvious and I'm just stupid, or if I genuinely found something interesting here. Probably a mix of both, but yeah. Anyways, I'm gonna go back to slaughtering British people. Bye!